My name is Brandon Keller. I'm 31 years old now, and I work as a senior project manager in commercial real estate development out of Denver, Colorado. I've got a good life now. Wife, son, another on the way. But the foundation of it all. It was built on the wreckage of what happened to me when I was 15. What I'm about to share isn't something I've talked about publicly before. Not in detail, not even with most of my family. But after what just happened a few months ago, I need to get it out. See, my real mom passed away from pancreatic cancer when I was only 4. I don't remember much about her, just fragmented images of her brushing my hair, a floral robe, the smell of lavender. After she died, my dad, Alan Keller, who was 42 back then, raised me alone for a couple of years. Then when I was 7, he married Monica. She was 35 at the time, all polished smiles and Pinterest parenting energy. At first, Monica tried the typical, "I'm your new mom now" routine, packed me organic lunches, called me Sweet Pea, even volunteered at my elementary school's book fairs. But once she gave birth to my half-sister Tessa, everything shifted. Suddenly, I was background noise. Dad became stricter with me, borderline militant. I'd bring home a B+ in geometry and he'd say, "Why not an A?" I'd land a spot on the soccer team and he'd scoff, "Yeah, why aren't you team captain?" But when it came to Tessa, she could spill grape juice on the carpet and they'd call it expressive curiosity. Her science fair volcano literally exploded and soaked the table, and Monica cried, "You tried so hard, baby girl." It wasn't just favoritism, it was like living in two separate households under the same roof. I was the project in need of fixing while Tessa was their delicate little star. Looking back now, I'm almost certain I had undiagnosed ADHD. I struggled with concentration impulsivity sitting still. But instead of support, I got scolded. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my dad would say. And Monica, she'd nod by me and I in agreement, arms crossed like she was some kind of behavioral specialist. My dad worked long hours running a regional contracting business. That meant Monica ran the house and she made sure I knew it. The meals she cooked were always one serving short. The laundry always came back shrunk or stained, and little by little she chipped away at my stability. She'd accidentally forget to pick me up from practice or tell me dinner was in the fridge when it wasn't. It was always small things, nothing worth calling out. But I felt it, and worse, I couldn't prove it. Every time I brought it up to Dad, he brushed it off. "Monica works hard," he'd say, "cut her some slack." If I said something got broken, Monica would sigh and go, "Oh, Brandon must have done it." And my dad would believe her without hesitation. She had this way of appearing just flustered enough to seem innocent, but not enough to seem careless. It was performance, and she was damn good at it. And then there were the mind games. She'd move my things and then scold me for being messy. She'd whisper to my dad behind closed doors, and afterward he'd look at me differently, like I was a threat instead of his son. I was constantly anxious, constantly alert, never at ease. And then one day everything changed. It was a Wednesday in October. I was walking home from school, taking my usual shortcut through Marston Park. That's when I saw Monica under the old elm trees near the wooden bridge with someone I recognized. A guy named Clint Morgan, who used to visit our house once a month for those charity meetings Monica claimed to organize. He was tall, muscular, always wearing tight shirts and expensive shoes. Dad once joked that Clint looked like a Calvin Klein billboard for protein powder. And Monica was kissing him. Not a peck, not a thank you for the help kind of kiss. A real kiss. passionate, hands roaming, and I stood there frozen behind a tree like my bones had turned to glass. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, I bolted home, hard hammering, unsure of what to do. My instincts screamed, "Tell Dad," but my logic knew better. Monica had spent years building her image as the devoted wife and mom while painting me as the erratic, ungrateful, jealous teenager. Dad adored Tessa. He would never risk the perfect family image to believe the son he barely trusted. So I said nothing. I tried to forget. I tried. But the next few days, everything began to unravel. And I started seeing things I'd never noticed before, things that would make everything fall apart. After that day in the park, everything Monica did suddenly had context. Her sideways glances, her constant overcompensation, the way she always made sure Dad was distracted whenever Tessa was around. I couldn't stop replaying what I saw her with Clint Morgan, the man who was supposedly helping organize community outreach events. And then there was Tessa's hair. Reddish brown, not chestnut like Dad, not blonde like Monica claimed hers used to be, but a shade eerily close to Clint's. I couldn't unsee it. It had always seemed a bit off, but now it screamed at me every time I looked at her. I started noticing other things: her facial features, the way she smiled, the cleft in her chin, subtle things, things Dad would never catch unless someone pointed them out. But that someone couldn't be me, because I already knew how that conversation would go. Dad would accuse me of lying, of trying to destroy his marriage. Monica had spent years making sure that anything I said would be received with suspicion. She'd planted that seed early that I was a troublemaker, a jealous, manipulative, erratic teenager. So I stayed quiet, afraid that speaking out would only make things worse. Until I overheard her. It was a few nights after the park incident. I had gotten up to get water padding barefoot down the hallway toward the kitchen. That's when I heard Monica's voice, low, hurried, panicked. She was on the phone. I stopped just short of the doorway, hidden in the dark. "You don't understand Clint," she whispered. "He's starting to notice." My stomach turned. He thinks she's his, but we both know the truth. I froze. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't believe what I'd just heard. She was talking about Tessa, about my dad, about the lie. The room spun. I must have made some kind of noise because suddenly Monica's voice changed, bright and sugary. "Brandon, sweetheart, you shouldn't be up this late." I bolted back to my room, heart racing like I'd run a marathon. I slammed the door and locked it, pressing my back to it like she might try to follow. She didn't. But from that moment on, I knew the truth, knew that Tessa wasn't my dad's daughter, knew that Monica would do anything to keep her secret safe. And I knew I was a threat to her now. Everything changed after that. She started watching me more closely. I couldn't even walk past Tessa's room without Monica appearing from nowhere asking what I was doing. Once I was helping Tessa with her multiplication tables, basic stuff, fourth grade math, and Monica burst in like I'd set the house on fire. She pulled Tessa away so fast it scared both of us, then told my dad I was getting too close to her daughter. I didn't understand what she was trying to imply at first. And then it hit me. She was laying the groundwork for something. The next few days I noticed Dad acting strange. He'd give me these long, quiet looks at dinner, like he was studying me. Monica would whisper to him when she thought I wasn't listening, then glance at me with that thin-lipped smile that made my skin crawl. I started avoiding the house, spending extra time at the library or wandering around the mall just to delay coming home. But even that was used against me. Monica told Dad I was probably involved with drugs or getting into trouble. The more I stayed away, the more suspicious she made me seem. No one asked why I looked tired. No one cared that my grades were slipping. No one noticed the panic attacks, the late night crying into my pillow, the way I flinched every time Dad raised his voice. 2 weeks after that night in the park, I came home from school like usual. Something felt off as soon as I stepped onto the porch. The air was too quiet. The front door was cracked open, and when I glanced to the left, there they were, two police cruisers. Their lights weren't flashing, but the presence was enough to send a chill through me. I stepped inside, and the first thing I heard was Monica's voice, crying, loud theatrical hiccuping sobs. Fake. I knew it immediately. She was on the couch surrounded by tissues with two officers seated across from her. My dad stood in the corner, face pale, jaw tight, fists clenched. Tessa wasn't anywhere in sight. When they saw me, everything stopped. One of the officers stood up and motioned for me to follow him to the kitchen. The other stayed behind with Monica and Dad. I didn't know what was happening. Then the questions started, and what they said changed my life forever. I sat at the kitchen table across from one of the officers, still wearing my school backpack, unsure whether this was real or some kind of bizarre nightmare. The cop looked at me like he pitied me, like I was already guilty. Then came the words that stopped my world. He told me that Monica had reported me, that both she and Tessa had claimed I'd touched Tessa inappropriately. I didn't even register what he meant at first. I just blinked, jaw slack, mind blank. What I whispered, no, that's not true. I said it again, louder. No, that never happened. But he didn't stop. He asked where I touched her. How many times? If I'd threatened her to keep it quiet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked toward the living room, could hear Monica still crying, overacting, using phrases like I saw the signs and I feel so stupid for not noticing sooner. My dad still hadn't said a word. I felt like I was going to be sick. I told the officer she was lying, that I'd seen her with another man, that she was trying to silence me. One of them actually raised his eyebrows, but the other, he just looked at me like I was a scared kid saying anything to get out of trouble. And then my dad exploded. He came into the kitchen like a freight train, yelling about how I'd gone too far this time, screaming about how I was trying to ruin his marriage, called me jealous, called me twisted, called me not right in the head. I'd never seen that kind of rage in his eyes before, not even when I was a kid and messed up his truck windshield with the baseballs. The cops surprisingly didn't arrest me. Maybe because Monica couldn't give details that lined up. Maybe because they didn't have physical evidence. Maybe because I was only 15. But they did advise my father to take precautions, as if I were some kind of criminal lying in wait. My dad didn't wait for court orders. He stormed up the stairs and came back down with a trash bag and my backpack. "You've got 10 minutes, he growled. "Get your things and get the hell out. If I ever see you near Tessa again, I swear to God." He didn't finish the sentence. Monica stood behind him pretending to be devastated, but I saw the look she gave me, that tiny, victorious smirk, the same one she wore when she sabotaged my laundry when she made accidents happen to my things. I went upstairs in a daze, stuffed whatever I could into the bag, some clothes deodorant, a toothbrush, tried to grab my Game Boy, but Dad blocked the doorway. "Everything in this house belongs to me," he said coldly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to beg him to stop and listen. But instead I nodded and walked down the stairs, gripping my things like a thief sneaking away. Tessa stood in the hallway looking confused, clutching a stuffed giraffe. She couldn't have understood what was going on. Monica had wrapped an arm around her like she was shielding her from a monster. That image, that snapshot, burned itself into my brain. Dad demanded my house key, told me I was no longer his son. Monica gave me a mock sympathetic frown and said, "Maybe someday you'll get the help you need." I said nothing, there was no point. They stood there and watched me walk out like I was the villain in some made-up horror story. I looked back once. Dad had one arm around Tessa. Monica was still dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I think I stopped breathing. I walked for hours that night. I had $43 in my wallet and no one to call. Couldn't go to a friend's house. Monica had already spread her version of the story. Some of their parents probably thought I was a predator. I knew how this would go in a town like Redfield, Nebraska. Once a rumor like that takes root, truth doesn't matter. I ended up near the edge of town, stumbling across an old boarded-up factory that the city had condemned years ago. It was known as a place where homeless guys sometimes crashed. I didn't have any other options. That's where I spent my first night on the street. 15 years old, lying on a concrete floor, wrapped in a damp hoodie and using my backpack as a pillow. I remember staring up at the cracked ceiling that night and thinking, so this is it. That first night in the old Redfield packing warehouse was the coldest I'd ever felt, not just physically, but inside. I curled up between two crates under a frayed sleeping bag a guy named Ronnie threw me, mumbling, "You're small, you'll fit there." He looked grizzled but not unkind. He didn't ask questions, neither did the others. Over the next few weeks, I got to know the men who lived there. Ronnie, who used to be a trucker, Terrence, an ex-Marine with PTSD, and Tom, an older man who once owned a small plumbing business before a fire and a divorce wiped his life clean. Tom sort of took me in. He showed me where to get hot meals, mostly churches or missions that didn't ask questions, and which gas stations didn't kick you out if you needed the bathroom. He taught me how to layer newspaper under my hoodie for warmth, how to hide your backpack so it wouldn't get stolen, and most importantly, never stand still too long. That's when people notice you. I couldn't go back to school. Couldn't get a job. I was 15 with no ID and no address. I stole food, sometimes skipped town whenever someone seemed to recognize me. It wasn't survival, it was erasure. Redfield was small, the kind of place where news travels faster than fire. Monica had made sure everyone heard her version, that I was disturbed, a threat to his little sister, that my dad had done what any father would do. I couldn't even walk past a grocery store without someone glaring. Teachers who used to smile at me now turned away. Parents ushered their kids across the street when they saw me coming. My name had become poison. Eventually, I left town altogether. Tom said, "You've got a shot, Brandon. You're still young. Don't rot out here like the rest of us. Go before the streets take hold." He handed me a crumpled napkin with an address in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and the name Raymond C., my cousin, he said. "Manages a few kitchens. He might help." He also gave me his last 40. "I don't need it," he said, "but you do." I never saw him again. I used most of that money for a Greyhound ticket. The rest bought a loaf of bread, 2 bottles of water, and a tiny travel-sized toothbrush. I arrived in St. Cloud hungry and lost, but I found Raymond's restaurant, an old-school Italian place called Donatelli's, and walked in with my heart thudding in my ears. Raymond didn't say much, looked me up and down, then said, "You want work, you wash dishes, you don't complain, you mess up, you sleep outside again." I nodded. I washed dishes every night for 3 months, slept in the supply closet on a folded towel roll. No one knew. Raymond pretended not to know either. I saved every dollar. Eventually, I moved from dishwasher to prep line chopping garlic and peeling potatoes, then saute cook, then server, then manager in training. Some nights I'd stay after everyone left reading books in the back. The local library let you register with just a shelter letter. I read about business management, property investment accounting. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, I just knew I never wanted to be powerless again. Then one night, everything shifted. A girl named Erin came into the restaurant with her mom. I was waiting tables by then. She was in college business major. She smiled at me when I brought the bread basket. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I blinked. Sure. What's actually good here?" "The carbonara's solid," I said. "Frank makes the sauce himself, doesn't use canned cream." She smiled. "You know the chef by name. Impressive." That small moment became something huge. She started coming in regularly, sometimes with friends, sometimes just her laptop and her finance textbooks. She'd wave me over, ask questions about her assignments. One time, she asked me how a company could post profits but have no cash flow. "Probably creative accounting," I said, refilling her water. "They're booking receivables as assets while burning through cash." She stared at me. "You read financial reports?" I shrugged, "Just stuff from the library." She looked like she was seeing me for the first time. "That's actually kind of amazing." We became friends, real friends. She never looked at me like I was broken, never asked why I worked so much or why I flinched at loud voices. For months, I didn't tell her anything about Alan, about Monica, about the lies. But she never pushed. Erin changed everything for me. She made me believe that maybe I wasn't doomed to be who they said I was, that I could be more than that homeless kid with a garbage bag and nowhere to go. Over the next couple years, Erin and I kept orbiting closer without ever fully colliding. She kept visiting the restaurant, always sitting in my section, always asking about new books I was reading. I didn't tell her how I still lived in a one-room apartment above a rundown laundromat. Didn't tell her how I sometimes skipped meals to afford library fees for overdue books. She didn't need to know how broken I really was. Then one night, everything changed. She came in late carrying a textbook and looking utterly frustrated. "Midterms," she groaned as she flopped into the booth. "This real estate stuff makes zero sense." I was closing out tables, but I paused. "Which part?" She looked up. "Cap rates, income ratios, the whole financing matrix. I swear it's designed to make people fail." I chuckled. "Cap rate is just the net operating income divided by the property value. It's how investors measure return." She blinked. "Wait, really? That actually makes sense." I shrugged. "It's all numbers. You just have to follow the story behind them." "Okay, you're officially smarter than my professor." She laughed. That was the night I finally told her a sliver of the truth. Not the whole thing, just that I'd dropped out young, had to figure life out on my own, and was trying to get a GED. I expected her to flinch or shift uncomfortably, but she just said, "Well, let me know if you ever want help with math. I'm pretty decent at algebra." From then on, she became more than a friend. She started tutoring me in the mornings before class and leaving me notes with formulas. I studied obsessively, spending every spare second cramming at the public library or in Donatelli's back room. 6 months later, I passed my GED. The library staff cheered for me. Erin brought me a cupcake with a tiny diploma stuck in it. It was the first time in years I'd celebrated anything. Erin never asked for my story, and I didn't offer it. Not yet. I was still too afraid that once she knew she'd pull away like everyone else had. I'd been abandoned once. I wasn't strong enough for it to happen again. Meanwhile, Raymond noticed how serious I was about learning. He started letting me sit in on supplier meetings, taught me how to read vendor contracts and labor cost reports. I started tracking inventory manually and identifying waste. Soon I was creating spreadsheets and recommending changes that saved him thousands. You ever think of doing more than this? Raymond asked one night while we were cleaning up. Like what? You've got a brain for business, Brandon, not just food. You ever consider real estate? I shrugged, not exactly in the cards. He gave me a long look. I know a guy, manages some commercial properties. If you're serious, I could make a call. I nodded, unsure if I was excited or terrified. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in front of Wendell Hartley, a serious-looking man in a crisp blazer who studied me like I was an investment risk. Erin had come with me all business. She spoke on my behalf when I froze up. He knows more about expense reports than some of my classmates, and he's been running cost audits for Donatelli's for a year now. Wendell leaned back. Where'd you go to school? Passed my GED last spring, I said quietly. He nodded slowly. You understand NOI, cap rates, absorption rates? Yes, sir. Tell me what's wrong with investing in a multi-use property during a buyer's market. That's when everything I'd studied came pouring out: market saturation, debt service coverage, loan-to-value risk property, turnover timelines. I spoke for 5 straight minutes. When I finally stopped, I realized Erin was beaming. Wendell just nodded. You start next Monday, entry level. I walked out of that building lightheaded. Erin hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Told you, I knew you could do this. That job became my first real anchor in life. I worked harder than anyone else in the department, took notes, asked questions, read every policy manual and property law reference I could find. Wendell saw that and gave me room to grow. Within a year, I was handling 3 properties on my own. Meanwhile, Erin and I had gone from friends to partners in every way. We moved into a modest apartment just outside Minneapolis, the first place I'd ever paid rent for under my name. We split bills, cooked together. We weren't officially dating, but everyone assumed we were, including her mom. You two ever going to stop pretending you're just roommates? She asked one night during dinner. Erin smirked. We like to keep the mystery alive. I laughed, but truthfully, I still felt unworthy of her. She deserved someone with a clean slate, not a guy with a past built on lies and betrayal. Then one night, while we were working late on a property proposal, Erin looked up and said, You know, for someone who understands markets and capital better than most investors, you're an idiot about people. I looked confused. What? I've been waiting 2 years for you to ask me out, she said plainly. I froze. I'm not Erin. I'm not good enough for you. Try me. And so for the first time in my life, I told someone everything. About Alan, Monica, Jenny, the lies, the cops, the bag of clothes, the warehouse, Tom, everything. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She cried. Then she kissed me. Life was finally feeling stable. Erin and I had been married for nearly a year. I was managing mid-tier commercial projects across the Twin Cities metro. We just found out Erin was pregnant, a baby boy. Her mom cried when we told her. I just stood there speechless, one hand on Erin's stomach, wondering how I'd gotten so lucky. Then out of nowhere, the past came knocking. I was scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break when I saw it a friend request. Profile picture showed a man who looked older, worn down, but unmistakably familiar. Alan, my father. For a moment, I thought it had to be a mistake. Then I opened his profile. There was a picture of him with Jenny. She looked like a grown woman now. Taller, same reddish hair. A second later, a message popped up. Brandon, I know it's been a long time. I've made a lot of mistakes. Not a day goes by that I don't regret what happened. Jenny is getting married soon. She misses her big brother. Beth and I would like to talk. Please give us a chance. I stared at the screen like it had turned to ice. Erin found me at the kitchen table, phone in hand, pale. What happened? She asked, her tone already careful. My dad found me, I said flatly, sent me a friend request. She gently took the phone, read the message, and sat down next to me. What do you want to do? I didn't know. Part of me wanted to delete the message and never look back. Another part, the one that still carried that 15-year-old boy inside, wanted answers. So I responded, just one line. Why now? He replied within minutes. I've had some health scares recently. Makes you think about what really matters. I want to fix things while I still can. We messaged on and off for 2 weeks. I found out Jenny had just turned 24. She worked in digital marketing, was engaged to a corporate attorney named Scott. Beth apparently was doing well, though that meant nothing coming from Alan. Erin kept telling me to be careful. People like them don't change overnight, she said, but some foolish part of me needed to see them. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was stupidity. I agreed to let them visit. That Saturday, they arrived in a rental car. Alan looked much older than I remembered. His hair was fully gray, and he walked with a subtle limp. Beth looked almost untouched by time, still with that plastic warmth in her smile. And Jenny looked like a woman I barely recognized. She walked through our home, eyes wide. This place is beautiful, she said, running her fingers along the entryway console. 5 bedrooms, and it's just the 2 of you. I nodded, planning ahead. Alan smiled thinly. Real estate development, huh? Never would have guessed. You've done well for yourself. Raymond gave me a shot, I said pointedly, unlike some people. Beth chimed in, quickly smoothing tension with syrup. We all made mistakes, Brandon. That's why we're here to make things right. Erin, sensing the direction things were going, slipped away to check on our son. She didn't trust herself to stay quiet. Then came the ask. Alan gestured to my office. Can we talk? He sank into my desk chair like it still belonged to him. Your sister's getting married, starting her life. They've been trying to find a home, but the market's brutal right now. Interest rates, you know. I stood stiffly. What's your point? Well, he said, gesturing around like he was making a case for someone else's property. You've got all this space. Maybe you could sell it to them. Cheap. You and Erin are doing great. You could get another place easily. I blinked. You want me to give Jenny my house? He raised his palms, not give per se, just help her out. I stared at him. You threw me out at 15 based on a lie. And now you want my home for the daughter of the woman who framed me. He looked mildly irritated. That was a long time ago, Brandon. No, I snapped. It's now. It's every time I had to sleep under a bridge or beg for food because of what Beth did. You believed her over me, and now you want a favor. Beth stepped in, face tense. Is everything okay? Oh, everything's fantastic, I said, voice laced with venom. Your husband's just asking if I'll donate my house to the daughter he thinks is his. Her face turned to stone. Jenny had just walked in. What? Dead silence. Alan looked confused. I turned to Beth. Tell them Monica. Jenny's hands trembled. What is he talking about? Beth tried. She really did. Claimed I was bitter, lying, just trying to hurt them. But Alan had already seen it. Jenny, her face, her hair, none of it looked like him. And somewhere deep down he'd known. He demanded a DNA test. Jenny sobbed. Beth tried to stop him. Aaron called an Uber and ushered them out. The moment they left, the air in the house shifted heavier, somehow charged with all the unspoken things I hadn't wanted to revisit. Aaron was already in the backyard with our son playing in the sandbox. I joined them, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept going back to that expression on Jenny's face, pure confusion mixed with dread. Later that evening, Alan called. I didn't answer. The next morning, Jenny texted me. "Is it true?" That was all she wrote. 3 words that held the weight of a collapsing identity. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I got another message, not from Jenny, but from Alan. I got the test done. I had to know. I waited. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then another message came through. I'm not her father. 0% match. I don't even know who I am anymore. I sat with that message for a long time. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. This was what I'd carried for nearly 2 decades, the truth finally confirmed. But all I felt was hollow. Later that afternoon, Alan came to my office unannounced. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway with an envelope in his hand and tears already rolling down his cheeks. Then he sat down, broke the seal, and placed the paper in front of me like it was an offering. I glanced at the DNA report, 0 biological relation. He wiped his eyes. Everything I built, everything I sacrificed, and it was all built on a lie. I looked at him, this man who once screamed in my face, called me broken, told me I didn't belong in his house. Now he was just a man, tired, lost. I saw Beth with him, I said quietly. His name was Marcus Fields. He used to come to our house when I was a kid. You remember? Alan's brow furrowed, and then I saw it the moment recognition hit. The guy with the tailored suits and that stupid Corvette. I nodded. He leaned back like the weight of the realization was breaking him in half. I thought they were working on a fundraiser. They were working on something, I said bitterly. He chuckled once, dry and humorless. So what now? What happens to Jenny? I looked at him. What always happens to people who grow up in someone else's lie? A week passed, then came the explosion. Beth had tried to keep Alan from telling Jenny the truth. Said the test had to be wrong. Claimed the lab messed it up, blamed me, accused me of paying someone off. But Alan wasn't listening this time. For once, he saw through her. And then he snapped. I don't know all the details, but according to Jenny, who called me sobbing, the fight turned physical. Alan shoved Beth. She hit a glass table, fractured 3 vertebrae. Beth was hospitalized. Alan was arrested. When Aaron showed me the headline from the local paper, "Local Man Arrested in Domestic Dispute After Paternity Scandal," I wasn't even surprised. 3 to 5 years, they said. Given his age and clean record, it'd probably be closer to 3. Jenny cut off all contact with Beth, moved in with an aunt. The wedding was canceled. Apparently her fiancé wanted nothing to do with the chaos once the truth came out. Too much drama, Jenny had said in one of her late-night messages. He said he didn't want to raise someone else's mess. That hurt me more than I thought it would. Jenny kept texting, mostly questions I didn't want to answer about Marcus, about the past, about what was real. I stopped replying. Aaron said it was the right thing to do. She's not your responsibility, she reminded me. You've done enough. Still, I felt for her. She didn't ask for this. She didn't ask to be the product of betrayal. She didn't ask to lose her father, her fiancé, and her identity all in 1 month. And as for Beth, Well, karma finally arrived slow and devastating. Her sister checked her into a rehabilitation facility. Apparently, the painkillers weren't new. She'd been taking them long before the injury, hiding her addiction behind those carefully controlled smiles. Even now, with the DNA test in hand, Beth still told anyone who would listen that I had made everything up, that I doctored the results, that I was out for revenge. And some people believed her. Small towns thrive on drama, not truth. I stayed away from it all. Alan never tried to contact me again. Jenny's messages got fewer and fewer. Eventually, they stopped altogether. 2 months passed like fog drifting over a battlefield, quiet, cold, and filled with the remnants of things destroyed. Erin was well into her second trimester. The nursery was taking shape in the room Alan once thought he could hand over to Jenny. Soft pink walls, tiny golden stars painted on the ceiling, and a rug shaped like a cloud. Erin said it would be a place of peace, and for once our house felt like one. But peace has a way of feeling unfamiliar when you've known nothing but chaos. One night as I tucked Jake into bed, he looked up at me with his big brown eyes and asked, "Dad, do you have a sister?" I hesitated. I used to. "What happened?" "She got lost," I said quietly, brushing his hair back. "And sometimes people who get lost need time to find their way back." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did more than I gave him credit for. A week later, I got one last message from Jenny. "I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. I can't stay here anymore. Everyone looks at me like I'm a stranger. I don't even recognize myself. Thank you for telling me the truth, even if it broke everything." I stared at that message for a long time. Erin saw it too, but didn't say a word. She just reached over and held my hand. We never talked about it again. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. I knew that if I answered, I'd feel responsible again. Responsible for her grief, for her confusion, for cleaning up the debris Beth had left behind. But Jenny wasn't a little girl anymore. And I wasn't the same broken teen thrown out with a trash bag and 10 minutes to pack. I had built something, a home, a family, a life I could be proud of. And for the first time, I chose to protect it, even if that meant letting go. Beth, meanwhile, had become a shadow of the person she'd pretended to be. Her sister updated Jenny occasionally, and those updates made their way to me through silence. Detox was rough. She relapsed twice. The pain medication had become an anchor, dragging her down, and with no one left to lie to, she had to face the version of herself she'd spent decades hiding from. Alan remained in jail, 3 years behind bars at nearly 60. According to Jenny's last message, he had started attending therapy sessions. Court-mandated, but maybe something would stick. Or maybe he was just doing the minimum to get out early. I didn't care anymore. I wasn't angry with him, not in the way I used to be. I was just done. One night I found myself standing in the nursery long after everyone else had gone to bed. I looked around at the quiet, the softness, the promise of a new beginning. And then I thought of Tom, the man who gave me shelter when I had no name, no trust, no place. I still didn't know what happened to him. Maybe he was gone. Maybe he had found his way like I had. But I wished I could tell him he was right. I did make something of myself, and it all started with someone choosing to believe in me when no one else would. Sometimes redemption doesn't come with a dramatic reunion or a teary apology. Sometimes it's a room painted pink and gray filled with light and hope and silence. A silence that doesn't hide pain, but heals it. The trial ended quietly, like the end of a storm when you realize there's nothing left to repair. I didn't go. My attorney advised against it and I agreed. I wasn't there for justice anymore. I'd gotten that already in pieces in silence and in the slow, heavy unraveling of lies. Alan was sentenced to 3 years. Could have been worse considering everything, but the judge took his age and spotless record into account. Jenny told me later. She was the only one still in touch with both of them. I didn't ask her to relay updates, she just did. Beth remained in rehab. Turned out she'd been abusing painkillers long before the hospital incident. Her sister, who once defended her blindly, told Jenny the truth. Beth had been spiraling for years, carefully hidden behind well-timed tears and forced smiles. 6 months of treatment ahead of her. Maybe more, maybe forever. Jenny tried to cope. She began searching for Mark, the man who was really her father, asking around shelters, old addresses, anything. She finally found someone who remembered him. Overdose behind a gas station convenience store 2 years ago. Unclaimed, unnoticed. When Jenny texted me that the words were jagged raw, I don't even know who I am anymore. Every time I look in the mirror, all I see is his face. I read it at 3:08 a.m. alone in the hallway outside the nursery. Erin had been right. Every time I replied to Jenny, she grew more attached, more dependent. And I couldn't fix her. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. She wasn't the girl I used to protect, and I wasn't her brother in the way she'd believed. Her ex-fiancé even reached out to me once asking if the insanity ran in the family, said he was thinking about kids and didn't want to inherit the drama. I blocked him. Jenny may have been confused, broken even, but she didn't deserve that kind of judgment. And still Beth hadn't let up. She told people I'd made up the whole story, twisted everything, forged the DNA test to ruin her out of vengeance. That I was the real manipulator, a sociopath. Some people believed her. Small towns are like that. They don't need truth. They need a version that fits their comfort. But here in my home, the truth lived in the air we breathed. Erin's pregnancy went smoothly. She laughed more, slept better. We painted the final wall of the nursery together on a Sunday afternoon while Jake played with blocks in the hallway. She placed her hand on her belly and said, "She's going to have everything I didn't." I nodded, everything we didn't. I thought of Tom again. I always did at moments like that. Wished I could tell him that I owned a house now, that I had a family, that I was loved. A week before the baby was born, a package arrived. No return address, inside a manila envelope and a note. "I'm moving out of state, starting fresh. Thank you for telling me the truth, even if it ruined everything. I hope your daughter has a beautiful life, Jay." Inside the envelope was a photograph. Me maybe 16 years old in the background of some birthday party. Jenny stood in front of me with cake on her nose, smiling. It was blurry, candid, honest. The kind of picture people don't think twice about. I stared at it for a long time before sliding it into the back of my desk drawer. That night, Erin went into labor. 14 hours, complications. But in the end, she came out holding the most perfect little girl I'd ever seen. We named her Lily. Jake stood beside the hospital bed, staring in awe. "She's so tiny." "Yeah," I whispered, "but she'll grow." That's what healing is really. Growing. Quietly. In the aftermath. My father never contacted me again. Beth stayed in rehab as far as I know. Jenny moved 2 states over. Last I heard from her was that note. I don't expect her to come back. But if she ever does, if she ever needs a door that won't be slammed shut, she knows where I live. And me. I work, I parent, I love, I build. I don't carry anger anymore. Just the memory of a kid who once stood outside a house he wasn't allowed to enter, and the man who now stands inside one built by his own hands. There was no applause, no parade for survival, just a quiet room, a child's laughter, and the soft hum of a life rebuilt from ashes. And that's more than enough.